Hey besties, welcome back to the channel, and wow, things just got messy in Texas. Okay, I'm not in Texas, but Jed Wallace is, and trust me, the situation just hit a major plot twist. Honestly, I kind of saw this coming, but here's exactly what went down. Last week, Judge Lyman dismissed Jed Wallace from the New York lawsuit because Jed isn't a New York resident. Jed successfully argued that the New York court didn't have jurisdiction over him. Lyman agreed, adding that Blake Lively simply hadn't provided enough proof that New York had the right to pull him into the case. But here's where everything got complicated. When Blake was given permission to refile in the correct state, that raised a huge issue because if she refiled in Texas, her own motion to dismiss in Texas would become meaningless. Remember, Blake previously told the Texas federal court that they didn't have jurisdiction over her. She claimed that filing a Rule 200 to petition for a deposition wasn't the same as acknowledging Texas had authority over her. She also argued that merely traveling to Texas to film another simple favor didn't give the state jurisdiction. So both Blake and Jed tried using similar arguments against each other, and neither of them got the result they wanted. The Texas court ended up agreeing with Blake. They said she didn't meet the standard for personal jurisdiction, and that's after months of reviewing the case. It resulted in a full 21-page dismissal, which is pretty wild considering the timing the judge released it right after Jed informed the court that Blake had already been dismissed in New York for jurisdictional reasons. The judge's key points: Jed never argued for general jurisdiction, only specific jurisdiction. Specific jurisdiction only applies when a defendant purposely does business in the state, and the case directly arises from those contacts. Random, unrelated contacts aren't enough. Jed attempted to tie Blake's film work and other projects to his claims, but the judge didn't buy it. Blake's defense argued her Rule 200 to petition in Texas did not give Texas jurisdiction over her. The Calder effects test didn't apply. Jed's information and belief claims that she repeated defamatory statements while in Texas weren't legitimate proof. The judge agreed with Blake on all 3 points. And honestly, when I saw how Jed was trying to weave in his jurisdiction arguments, I suspected this ruling was coming. But here's the twist: I think Jed strategically filed this knowing dismissal was likely. Why this creates a huge stalemate: if Blake files in Texas, Jed can immediately say she now availed herself of Texas jurisdiction and refile his case against her there. If Jed files in New York, the one place he just escaped from, Blake can instantly add him right back into the lawsuit. Neither of them wants that. Both fought to avoid certain courts, and both won, which ironically means they're now stuck. So what's left? The only realistic forum left is California. But that's a problem for Blake, because she would have to explain why she didn't file her lawsuit in California to begin with, how she obtained the content of Jen Abel's phone without a proper California subpoena, and California has strict privacy and notification laws. If someone subpoenas employee communications, the employer must notify the employee. Because Blake's subpoena went through New York, not California, she can't rely on California's legal protections, which means refiling in California opens up a whole new can of worms. So here's where the situation becomes a total legal trap for both of them. Neither Blake nor Jed wants to step into the other's home turf, because the moment one of them files in a state they previously rejected, they open the door for the other to immediately countersue in that exact same state. This is why we're at a complete standstill. If Blake files in Texas, Jed can instantly run back to the court and say, "See? She's availed herself. Now I can sue her here." He gets jurisdiction automatically. And Blake loses her entire argument that Texas has no authority over her. If Jed files in New York, Blake can immediately pull him right back into the lawsuit he just escaped. Why would Jed willingly walk back into that fire? He wouldn't. Both sides box themselves in. The only neutral battleground is California, and that's the last place. Blake wants this case to be heard. Why? Because California has some of the strictest digital privacy laws in the country. Any subpoena involving phones' employee data communications must notify the person whose data is being targeted. California courts take this extremely seriously. But Blake obtained Jen Abel's phone content under a New York subpoena, not California. So if she refiles in California, she'd have to explain, how did I legally obtain these phone records in a way that satisfies California law? Spoiler, she can't. So if Blake files in California, she risks the entire case getting thrown out. Not because of the claims themselves, but because her evidence may not be admissible under California law. That's a huge problem, and Jed knows that, which is why neither of them is moving. Not an inch. They are completely stuck, a legal stalemate where Blake can't sue in Texas, Jed can't sue in New York. Neither wants to risk California, and both are terrified of giving the other jurisdiction power. This is why Blake's team is suddenly screaming in New York filings about Jed abusing redactions. It's a pressure tactic because procedurally, they're trapped. What happens next, honestly? Probably nothing. For a while, both sides created a jurisdiction maze so tight that any move becomes a disadvantage. Until one of them is willing to take a major legal risk, the cases may simply stay frozen. She can't take any of the evidence she got from that New York subpoena on Banzan and carry it into a California court. It's not allowed. She would have to cure the subpoena under California law, meaning she'd need to reserve it, reissue it, and follow California's strict notice and privacy rules from scratch. And it gets worse for her. She also can't use the evidence she gathered in New York because there's no proper chain of custody. For a California case, she would need a legally valid reason to transfer every piece of discovery across state lines. And even then, she'd still be forced to explain how she launched the original action using a subpoena. That never would have been permitted in California. And that's the real point here. The reason she didn't file in California from day one is because she couldn't. She never would have been able to obtain the contents of Jenel's phone under California law. California does not accept evidence pulled through an out-of-state subpoena, unless you cure it with an in-state subpoena that meets their guidelines. She didn't do that. So if she files in California now, the Banzan issue will explode in her face, and the whole case could be tossed on that technicality alone, long before anyone even debates the actual claims. And none of this changes the core problem. The entire lawsuit began with a faulty subpoena. A subpoena that provided no notice to anyone involved. That stain doesn't wash out. So where does that leave Jed? He's not going to voluntarily subject himself to California jurisdiction. Why would he? He doesn't live there. And Blake can't file there without risking a major legal disaster. Honestly, part of me thinks she should file in California just so the state can slam her for what happened. With Banzan, the way Lively's team responded, especially the way they attacked Michael Gott, was ridiculous. Then today, her team pops off again, whining that the Wallaces have abused the sealing process with self-serving redactions to hide their conduct from the public. Like, Blake, be serious. You're saying this days after your own filings were unsealed and exposed everything. Pot, meat kettle. They go on complaining that the Wallaces are hiding documents and testimony that might make them look good. But here's the problem: Jed isn't even a party anymore. He was dismissed. What he did for previous clients has zero bearing on this case. He cannot be held liable in New York. The judge already said so. Lively's team keeps acting like he's still a defendant. He's not. Then they start talking about digital footprints and claim Jed admitted to auto-deleting Signal communications. Wrong, he didn't admit anything. Those messages auto-delete by default. That's literally how Signal works. And the judge already ruled that he did not spoil evidence. But Blake's team keeps spinning it anyway. They attached pages of proposed redactions and told the court why none of them should be allowed. They're arguing over whether Jed's work for unrelated clients should be made public. They're arguing over a single text message while Blake has deleted and even recreated her own 30-point agreement. The hypocrisy writes itself. Blake's team keeps pushing this narrative that Jed and his lawyers are hiding information. But the reality is the opposite. Jed is not a defendant. He is not part of the New York action anymore. He owes Blake nothing, not explanations, not documents, not access to private client files. But Blake keeps acting like she's entitled to everything from him, simply because it benefits her storyline. And the way she frames these redactions is wild. She claims the Wallaces are hiding untraceable efforts for another client, like it's some sinister cover-up. But if you actually read the filings, it's just normal PR work for unrelated people. And again, Jed is not on trial. Blake is trying to force unrelated clients' private information into the public record, just to weaponize it. Then she shifts to blaming Melissa Nathan, saying she redacted everything. In reality, it was one text. Meanwhile, Blake has deleted her own 30-point agreement, attempted to recreate it, and tried to pass the revised version off like nothing happened. No mention of that, of course. This is the pattern: cry foul about everyone else while quietly cleaning up your own mess. Behind the scenes, her team's latest filings read like they're scrambling. The tone is frantic. You can feel it. They're arguing with the court about redactions that don't even matter now, because the person they're complaining about has already been dismissed from the case. They keep insisting these digital footprints are essential to Blake's retaliation theory, but the judge already ruled Jed's Signal settings aren't evidence of wrongdoing. At this point, it feels like Blake is trying to litigate a case that doesn't exist anymore. At least not in New York, not with Jed, and not in the way she wanted. Every strategic doorway she had has slammed shut. She can't refile in Texas because Jed can immediately sue her there. She can't refile in California because the bans and subpoena will blow up her entire case. She can't go back to New York because the judge already ruled there's no jurisdiction over Jed. And here's the real kicker, both sides fought hard to avoid each other's courts. And both sides won. If either one tries to file anywhere now, the other gets an instant advantage. So neither of them can move. They've hit a complete legal stalemate. Jed doesn't need to take another step. Blake, on the other hand, is boxed in, trapped by her own strategy, her own filings, and her own subpoena issues. She built this maze and now she can't find her way out. And when you look at how her team is responding, it's obvious. They know it too. Blake is now hiding behind some kind of privilege shield with Colleen Hoover, and refusing to hand over Colleen's texts. Meanwhile, she's abusing her own privilege logs to avoid giving Wayfarer anything. This is the pattern: obstruct, withhold, delete, spoil a tan, then blame everyone else. She even claims the Wallace team shouldn't redact anything, because the public has a right to understand the manipulation of social media platforms. It's absurd. She's trying to turn routine PR work into some massive conspiracy, while insisting the public needs access to it, yet she's the one hiding her own communications, her own emails, and her own messages. She argues that unsealing this information might cause public backlash, and honestly, that line alone tells you everything. She's crafting a story where she's the victim of a smear campaign, despite the fact that we've seen zero evidence of any smear. None. Every filing she makes is centered around imaginary wrongdoing that no one can find because it doesn't exist. Just 2 weeks ago, she insisted the judge had to punish Jed because the Signal chats were deleted despite the court already ruling there was no spoliation. It's always moving goalposts, always blaming someone else. And the sad part? We've now seen the emails between her lawyers. We've watched her misuse the docket. We've seen how she twists facts in her filings. Every time she tries to accuse someone else, she ends up exposing herself even more. She lied about other women coming forward. She lied about Colleen Hoover preparing to sue Baldoni for sequel rights. Colleen never intended to sue him. She keeps lying about evidence, about motives, about redactions. And while Wayfarer has no issue producing documents, guess whose texts we never see? Blake's. Guess who keeps fighting discovery at every turn? Blake. Guess who keeps claiming everyone else is hiding things while she hides the most? Blake. This filing she rushed in tonight? It's a distraction. She knows more documents are about to drop on the docket and they won't look good for her. She's not refiling in Texas. She can't. Jed isn't refiling anywhere. He won't. This entire Lively versus Wallace war is pointless. He's not a defendant. He's not responsible for anything involving Jen Abel. And the internet doesn't hate Blake because of Jed, it hates Blake because of Blake. Jed didn't deserve this. Not the stress, not the health issues, not the harassment. Even if he has a history of covert PR work, there's zero evidence he did anything here. She dragged him into this for nothing. Any other person would have withdrawn their lawsuit months ago. But Blake keeps doubling down, and every time she does, the blowback gets worse. On top of that, we still haven't seen any of Blake's messages. Not a single full text thread. Not a single unredacted communication. Meanwhile, Wayfarer has repeatedly shown they're willing to hand over whatever the court asks for. The imbalance is obvious. The only party truly resisting transparency is Blake, and that brings us to tonight's filing. It reads less like a legal argument and more like an attempt to get ahead of bad press. She's framing Wayfarer as the one hiding information, even though most of the sealed or redacted material comes from her side, not theirs. She knows more documents are about to hit the docket, and instead of addressing the issues head-on, she's trying to control the narrative before those details become public. But here's the truth, Wayfarer has no reason to hide anything. Blake is the one facing serious questions about missing texts, inconsistent statements, and broad claims of privilege that block discovery. And when you zoom out, it becomes clear that this entire conflict between Lively and Wallace is essentially meaningless. He isn't a defendant. His actions, whatever they were, aren't legally tied to Jen Abel. And Abel was never Wallace's employer. None of this has any bearing on the actual claims at the heart of this case. Even more importantly, there's no real incentive for either of them to refile anything in Texas. Despite the threats, despite the posturing, despite the dramatic language in tonight's filing, it's not happening. There's no strategic advantage. There's no legal need. It's all noise meant to distract from the real story. More disclosures are coming, and they're not expected to favor Blake. And honestly, I do feel for Jed. You can disagree with digital marketing tactics or think he pushes too close to the line, but nothing in this case suggests he did anything close to what Blake is alleging. He didn't deserve the stress, the smears, or the health issues that this ordeal has caused. He should be left alone. The internet isn't against Blake because of a secret campaign, or because of shadowy digital manipulation. It's because of the choices she continues to make. Anyone else in her position would have ended this lawsuit months ago. But that's where things stand tonight. More filings are coming. More evidence will be unsealed. And this entire situation is moving toward a point where the court, not the public, not social media, not PR, will decide what's real and what isn't. If you've been following this saga, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.